The war had changed everything, and Robb Stark, once just the eldest son of Eddard Stark, had now become something much more dangerous, a king with vengeance in his heart. After the Red Wedding never happened, and the betrayal from the Freys and the Boltons failed miserably, the North stood stronger than ever. Robb had not only survived, but he had crushed them both, sending Lord Roose Bolton's head back to the Dreadfort and hanging Walder Frey's sons on his own castle walls. Now, his eyes turned to the south, to the heart of the Lannisters' power. Robb Stark wasn't the boy they once mocked. He had become something else, a commander the South had never seen before. His army, now full of hardened warriors from the north and even some Riverlands houses that rejoined him after his victories, marched with pride and a hunger for justice. The Lannisters had taken his father's head. They had tried to destroy his family, and now they would pay. King's Landing had become tense. Tywin Lannister had underestimated the young wolf before, and that mistake had already cost him dearly at Whispering Wood and Oxcross. Now the old lion sat in his chambers, reading raven after raven, filled with bad news. Robb Stark had taken Harrenhal. Then he took Maidenpool. Then he began to cut off all the supplies reaching King's Landing. The walls of the capital still stood strong, but the fear inside them was growing. Cersei Lannister, always proud, always cruel, was losing her grip. Joffrey, her monstrous son, ruled in name, but even he sensed it. The people hated them. Food was running low. The gold cloaks couldn't control the streets. Whispers of the Northern King were everywhere. "The young wolf is coming," they said in the shadows. "He will burn the lions in their den." Meanwhile, Robb Stark stood near the Trident River, planning his next move. His bannermen wanted to storm King's Landing, but Robb was wiser now. He had learned the lessons of war the hard way. "We take Lannisport first," he told them. "We strike at their pride. Let the lion bleed in its own golden bed." And so, while Tywin tried to rally the Reach to his side, Robb moved fast. Lannisport was caught off guard. The Northern Fleet, newly built with help from the Ironborn defectors who hated the Lannisters more than the Starks, attacked from the sea while Robb's army marched from the land. It wasn't just a battle. It was a message. The House of Lannister wasn't untouchable anymore. The news hit King's Landing like wildfire. "Lannisport has fallen," cried the ravens. "The young wolf rides for Casterly Rock." Tywin's face turned pale. Never in his life had a Stark dared to take the rock. And now his army was split, his power shaken, and his enemies growing. Dawn refused to help. The Tyrells hesitated. And the people? They were starving, and many of them began to whisper the unthinkable. Maybe the North should rule. Far in the east, Daenerys Targaryen also received word of Robb Stark's victories. A new power was rising in Westeros, and it wasn't the lions or dragons, it was the direwolf. She watched from Meereen with interest. The game was changing. But Robb Stark wasn't doing this for power or glory. He remembered his father's honor. He remembered his mother's tears. He remembered the scream of Grey Wind when the Freys tried to kill him. Every sword swing was for them. Every victory was for the North. And yet, deep in his heart, Robb knew one thing. The war was far from over. Tywin Lannister wouldn't go down without a fight. Cersei still held King's Landing, and the Iron Throne still cast its shadow across the realm. But for the first time in a long time, that shadow trembled. The banners of the direwolf flew high over Lannisport, and the streets echoed with the howls of victory. Robb Stark didn't celebrate. He stood on the high walls of the captured city, looking westward toward Casterly Rock, the seat of Lannister pride. Fire smote from Lannisport's docks, where Lannister ships had burned, and his men drank and shouted in the streets, but Robb's mind was already on the next move. this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Casterly Rock was next, and Robb knew it wouldn't fall easily. Back in King's Landing, Tywin Lannister was seething. His mouth was tight, his eyes sharp. He had crushed many houses before with patience and power. But now, power was slipping. The Reach hesitated, the Riverlands bled, and Dorne refused to send so much as a single sword. Worse, his enemies had begun to believe. The Starks, those northern wolves, were no longer just survivors. They were hunters now. He summoned Cersei, but she was already waiting in the council room, red wine in hand and fury in her eyes. "You let him take Lannisport," she hissed, voice sharp as a blade. "I let nothing," Tywin snapped. "He fights like a wolf, but wolves tire. His moment will come." Cersei laughed bitterly. "By the time his moment comes, he might be sitting on our bloody throne." But it wasn't just the throne at risk anymore. The people of King's Landing had grown restless. They were starving, angry, and tired of lion banners. Whispers filled the alleys. "Robb Stark is winning." The same city that once cheered for Joffrey now feared what might come when the North arrives. And arrive it would. Robb didn't march blindly. He made alliances along the way. House Harlaw of the Iron Islands, disgusted with Euron's madness, offered their ships. The Blackwoods and Mallisters rejoined his cause, drawn by the scent of real power. Even some Baratheon loyalists whispered their oaths once more, remembering the honor of Stannis and seeing a king with real blood in his veins. As his army reached the base of Casterly Rock, something strange happened. Deserters from the Lannister ranks began to come over. Hungry, hopeless, and disgusted with the Lannister name, they offered their swords to Robb. It shocked even his commanders. "Why trust lion men?" asked Great John Uber, eyes full of suspicion. Robb looked at the dirty, tired soldiers and said only, "Because they've seen the truth, and they're afraid of what happens if they stay on the wrong side." Inside the rock, Kevan Lannister prepared what remained of the defenses. Tywin hadn't returned, yet still clinging to power in King's Landing, trying to keep the crown from slipping. And now his family's ancestral seat was under siege. The battle for Casterly Rock was long and brutal. The cliffs made it nearly impossible to storm from the front, so Robb used an old smuggler's map, found in the docks of Lannisport, to sneak a small unit through a forgotten sea tunnel beneath the fortress. That night, the wolves entered the lion's den. It was Grey Wind who led them, his howl bouncing through the golden halls as Robb and his men emerged from the darkness. The rock fell from within, its gates opening at dawn to let the northern army march through. The gold of House Lannister was stained with blood. But Robb did not destroy the castle. He stood in its grand hall, where generations of Lannisters once ruled, and ordered his men to show restraint. "We are not them," he said. "We do not kill children in their sleep. We do not burn for pleasure." Even so, the message was clear. House Lannister had been broken. Far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen received the news with narrowed eyes. The boy king in the north had done what no man had done in centuries, humiliated the lions in their own den. She knew now that if she ever returned to Westeros, it wouldn't just be Lannisters or Freys she'd face. She would have to face the north, and in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister finally broke a wine cup in her hand and whispered the one thing she had sworn never to say: "We're losing." The Raven arrived in King's Landing at dawn. Tywin Lannister read the message without a word. The seal was broken, the wax cracked, but the truth inside it was whole and sharp. Casterly Rock has fallen. The very heart of House Lannister's centuries of power, legacy, and pride had been taken by a northern boy with ice in his veins and vengeance in his blood. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he stood up, slowly, like a mountain breaking from sleep, and walked to the window of the Tower of the Hand. The city below was already boiling, Markets were empty, rats replaced chickens, and the people whispered of riots again. A week ago, they cursed Robb Stark's name. Now they said it with awe. Robb Stark had done the unthinkable. Cersei burst into the chamber without knocking, her hair wild and her fingers red from broken wine goblets. How many more castles must fall before you admit it? He's not just a boy anymore, he's a king, and he's better than Joffrey ever was. Tywin turned slowly. "Watch your tongue." "No," she hissed. "No more lies, no more control. You promised me power, you said we would win. But look around, our armies are scattered, the rock is gone, and the people hate us." Behind them, Joffrey paced like a trapped rat, face red, voice shrieking. "I'll have him flayed. I'll burn Winterfell. You shut up!" Cersei snapped, her voice venom. "You are king in name only. And if Robb Stark walks through those gates tomorrow, even the throne won't save you." Meanwhile, Robb Stark didn't slow down. After taking Casterly Rock, he didn't rest. He sent word north to Sansa, still held in King's Landing as a political hostage, and to Arya, whose fate was still unknown. He missed them deeply, but he couldn't stop. The time for mourning had passed. Now it was war. He left a garrison in the Rock and moved east toward the heart of the realm. His army was not just northern. Now it was a blend of broken men, disloyal Reach knights, tired of Lannister arrogance, Baratheon holdovers seeking justice, and even wildlings who had crossed south after Jon Snow, now Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, sent word of Robb's cause. The direwolf was becoming a symbol of hope. Everywhere Robb marched, people rose, some opened their gates, others offered food and horses. The small folk didn't love him because he was noble. They loved him because he didn't burn villages or demand fealty with a knife to their throat. In one village near Crack-Claw Point, an old man gave Robb bread and salt and said, "You're not your father, boy, but you carry his honor." Robb simply nodded. "I carry his war." Inside the Red Keep, Cersei began to unravel. She doubled the guards around the castle. She tried to marry Joffrey to a high-born girl from the east to gain allies, but none accepted. Letters were sent to the Eyrie, to Old Town, even to Braavos, begging for help, but no one wanted to fight the North. Then came the whisper that changed everything. Varys brought it, silent as a shadow. He leaned into Cersei's ear and said, "The Tyrells have turned. They've opened talks with Robb Stark." It was unthinkable. The Reach had long supported the crown for power, but even their ambition had limits. They were bleeding from Lannister wars, fed up with royal madness and tired of feeding a city that spat on them. If the Tyrells joined Robb, King's Landing would be surrounded. Tywin's fist clenched the letter until the wax shattered. "We hold the city," he said flatly. "We burn the fields. We control the food. He'll come to us, and when he does, he'll bleed in the mud outside these walls." But even he knew the war was no longer on his terms. Far across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen watched the chaos unfold through whispers from her spies. The dragons had grown, her army was ready, but something unexpected had happened. In Westeros, a northern king had lit the realm on fire before her ships ever left the harbor. And in the shadows of the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister sipped his wine and muttered to no one in particular, "The wolves are at the gates," and this time they brought the storm with them. The storm was real, not just in the sky, but in the hearts of men. By the time Robb Stark reached the outskirts of King's Landing, his army had grown into something almost mythic. Northmen, river lords, ironborn defectors, Reach deserters, and even knights who once bent the knee to the Targaryens now followed him. Some followed him out of loyalty, others for survival, But many followed him because, for the first time in years, someone looked like they could actually break the wheel. King's Landing, prepared for siege. Tywin Lannister had reinforced the walls, pulled every last soldier into the city, and ordered wildfire stockpiled again just in case. He wasn't going to allow what happened at Casterly Rock to repeat itself. But fear is a poison, and it had already soaked into the stones of the Red Keep. The streets were empty by night. The rats were bolder than the guards. The small folk didn't cheer for their king anymore. They cursed his name while starving in silence. Joffrey, furious and panicked, ordered public executions daily to remind the people who ruled. But every body that swung only made the silence deeper. Robb Stark, unlike Tywin, didn't attack immediately. He circled the capital, cut off the roads, and choked the city slowly like a wolf waiting for its prey to tire. Grain from the Reach no longer reached the capital. Ships from the narrow sea stopped at Dragonstone or Storm's End instead. Every day, more birds arrived from other lords, offering secret oaths. Even the Ares sent a quiet message: "We will not stop the wolf's rise." Inside the Red Keep, Cersei drowned herself in wine and rage. She screamed at Grand Maester Pycelle, slapped servants, and accused Tyrion of treason at every turn. "He wants Robb to win," she hissed. "He's always wanted our ruin." Tyrion had grown tired of defending himself. "If I wanted ruin," he told her coldly, "I'd let you keep ruling." Meanwhile, Tywin held his last council meeting in a hall that once rang with power. Now, it felt like a tomb. Few remained, no allies, no new offers of marriage or alliance, just the Lannisters and a crown rusting in silence. "We must attack before they do," Kevan Lannister suggested, but Tywin's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking of Eddard Stark. He had mocked the man for his honor, called it weakness. But now, his son had turned that same honor into something dangerous, something inspiring. Robb hadn't become a monster. He hadn't burned cities or broken oaths. That's what terrified Tywin most. Honor was a better weapon than fear. Outside the gates, Robb Stark sat in a simple tent, not a golden hall. He didn't dress like a king, he wore leather and steel. No crown on his head, only the northern sword at his side. And men trusted him for it. Jon Snow arrived secretly that night. He had left the wall under special orders, allowed by the Night's Watch just this once. He entered Robb's tent and saw his brother, not the boy he once hunted with, but a man carved from war. "I had to see it," Jon said softly. "The young wolf, they call you." Robb smiled faintly. Still just Robb. They spoke for hours about Arya, who no one had seen in over a year, about Sansa, still locked in the capital, about their father and how the South had tried to erase his name. Robb asked about the wall, about the darkness in the far north, but Jon had no good news. "There are worse things coming," he warned. Robb nodded. "Then we end this quickly." At sunrise, he sent a message to the gates of King's Landing. It wasn't a threat, it was a challenge. "You have taken the blood of my family, burned my land, and stained my name. Open your gates and surrender the throne, or I will take it from your ashes. You have until sunset." The message was signed Robb Stark, King in the North, and soon King of the Seven Kingdoms. As the sun began to fall and shadows stretched across the fields, the bells of King's Landing rang, but not for surrender. Joffrey had ordered an attack. Tywin, despite knowing better, had allowed it. Pride had made its final mistake, and the gates opened to meet the young wolf's army head-on. The battle for King's Landing had begun. The ground trembled beneath the boots of thousands. Steel clashed with steel, arrows rained from the sky like black snow, and war horns howled across the fields as the gates of King's Landing burst open. Joffrey Baratheon, mad with fear and pride, had ordered a full assault on Robb Stark's forces, hoping to crush the Northern Army before they reached the Red Keep. It was a mistake. Robb had expected it. He had studied Tywin's old tactics for years now, and if there was one weakness the Lion had, it was pride. Robb's army didn't panic. They split cleanly into 3 divisions. One held the line, the other circled the eastern flank, and the third, led by Greywind himself, pierced through the heart of the charge like a spear through soft flesh. The Lannister soldiers, though many, were not what they once were. Half-starved, poorly led, and more loyal to gold than honor, they broke faster than expected. Some fled back toward the city. Others dropped their swords and surrendered on the field. The battlefield was turning into a graveyard, and the banners of the direwolf rose higher with every hour. From the Red Keep, Cersei stood on her balcony, watching it all unfold. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, as if trying to force the scene to change. Joffrey, meanwhile, paced like a trapped animal, spitting orders to terrified guards who no longer knew whom they truly served. "They're breaking," Tyrion muttered from the corner of the room. "Your grand plan is crumbling, sister." Cersei spun to face him. "You think this is funny? I think it's justice," he said with a tired smirk. "You burned Ned Stark. You butchered his family. You laughed when they begged for peace. Now the wolves are at our door, and no one wants to die for lions anymore." Cersei screamed, grabbing a goblet and hurling it at him. It missed by inches, but she wasn't listening. She was planning her escape. In the chaos of battle, Robb stayed focused. He didn't ride at the front, he commanded from the hilltop, eyes sharp, issuing precise orders. Men around him fought harder because of it. He wasn't just their king, he was their hope. Every blow struck was for the North, for the fallen, for the children of Winterfell who had been scattered like leaves in the wind. But Robb knew this wasn't victory yet. Not until the city was his, not until the Lannister name bent or broke. As the outer Lannister lines fell, Robb gave the final order: march from the gates, no burning, no looting, take the city with steel, not fire. Let the people see the difference. The soldiers obeyed. Not like savages, but like wolves under command. By nightfall, the streets of King's Landing echoed with the sound of northern boots. The gold cloaks, seeing the writing on the wall, threw down their swords. The gates of the city swung open, and the people poured into the streets, not to resist, but to watch. They expected carnage. What they saw was discipline. No shops were ransacked. No children were taken. No temples were burned. They saw something they hadn't seen in years. Order. In the Red Keep, Joffrey's voice cracked with rage. "We still have wildfire. We'll burn the whole city if we must." Even the guards looked unsure. Cersei slapped the boy. "You will not. If we burn the city, there will be nothing left to rule." And in that moment, something inside Joffrey broke. He sank to the floor, shaking, lips trembling. The boy who had screamed for heads now cried like a child. Tywin entered the chamber, eyes cold, armor still on. He looked at his grandson with disgust. "This is the king you've raised," he said to Cersei, "a sniveling little monster." Cersei raised her chin. "What now? Surrender?" Tywin turned to Tyrion. "Tell Stark we'll talk before more blood spills." But it was already too late. The Red Keep's outer walls were breached. Northern flags were being raised across the city. Bells rang again, this time, not for war, but for surrender. Robb Stark rode through the gates of King's Landing just before midnight. The boy who left Winterfell in grief now returned as a conqueror. And the Iron Throne, once thought untouchable, stood in silence, waiting for the next wolf to claim it. The throne room was colder than Robb had imagined, not because of the stone or the air, but because of the silence. The Iron Throne stood at the end of the hall, towering and twisted. made of swords and forged in fear. It didn't gleam, it didn't shine. It looked like what it truly was, a monument to pain. Robb Stark stood just a few paces from it, dust from the road still on his cloak, his armor dented, grey wind at his side like a ghost. His bannermen waited behind him in silence, the Great John, Lady Maege Mormont, Galbart Glover, and even some from the Reach and the Riverlands who had joined him during the war. All eyes were on the throne, but Robb didn't move toward it. He looked at it like one might look at a curse. "I did not come for that," he said finally, voice low. "I came for justice." The doors creaked open. Tyrion Lannister walked in alone, hands open to show no weapons. His face was tired, eyes sharp. He bowed, not low, but respectful. "You hold the city, King Robb," he said, "and the people. You can take the throne. But first, you should hear what I came to offer." Robb didn't speak. Tyrion continued, "My father is willing to surrender King's Landing. Joffrey will abdicate. The Lannisters will renounce all claims to the throne, and you may name your own terms for peace." The room remained still. "And what of justice?" Robb asked finally. "For my father, for my sisters, for the blood spilled in the twins, in the north, in my name." Tyrion hesitated. "Justice is harder than war. But if you want the throne, take it. The people already whisper your name. The gates were not stormed, they were opened. That matters." Robb didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked toward the throne, not to sit, but to look at it closer. The closer he got, the uglier it seemed. Melted blades, twisted metal, cruel edges. He could see blood still stained in places long forgotten. He turned to Tyrion. "I don't want this throne. I want a kingdom where no boy watches his father die for honor. I want a realm where children are not traded like cattle. If sitting on that throne means becoming like the men who built it, then burn it." Tyrion blinked. "You'd give up the crown?" "I'd build a new one," Robb said. "One not forged in fire, but in loyalty." In that moment, the Red Keep felt different. The shadows shifted. A new kind of power settled in the air, not one born from fear, but from purpose. Tywin Lannister, flanked by what few remained of his household guard, stood before Robb Stark in the courtyard of the Red Keep. No music played. No trumpets blared. This wasn't a ceremony, it was history. The old lion met the wolf's eyes. Pride burned behind Tywin's stare, but it flickered now less like fire, more like dying embers. "You fought well," Tywin said bitterly. "I underestimated you. You made war on my family," Robb replied. "You executed my father, lied to my mother, tried to butcher my army in a wedding hall. You didn't underestimate me, Lord Tywin. You overestimated your own legacy." Tywin's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. He removed his sword and laid it at Robb's feet. It was done. Joffrey was dragged out next. The boy king, now just a scared teenager, screamed and cursed as he was forced to his knees. "You can't do this! I'm the king! I am the king!" Robb looked at him with pity more than hate. "You were a mistake, one this kingdom has paid for in blood." He turned to the guards. "Take him away. No execution. Let him live with the weight of what he's done." Some were shocked. They expected heads to roll. But Robb Stark was not Tywin. He would not stain victory with pointless cruelty. Later that night, Sansa Stark was found in her chambers alive, guarded but silent. When Robb walked in, she stared at him like he was a ghost. "Robb!" she whispered. He rushed forward and pulled her into a tight embrace. "You're safe now," he said. "You're home." But even as they embraced, Robb knew this wasn't the end. The war was won, but the game was far from over. Because across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen had just set sail, and she wasn't coming to play nice. The dragons had taken flight. Sails bearing the Targaryen sigil read dragons on black cut across the narrow sea like blades in the wind. Daenerys Stormborn stood at the bow of her lead ship, hair whipping in the sea breeze, her dragons circling high above as if they could already smell blood in the west. News of Westeros had reached her weeks ago. King's Landing had fallen. Robb Stark ruled the realm, not from fear, but from loyalty. That was a problem. "I should have landed in fire," she told Ser Jorah, "but now I arrive in the shadow of a boy with a crown of honor. That makes him dangerous." Jorah said nothing, but the worry in his eyes said enough. She had dragons. She had the Unsullied. She had freed cities, shattered chains, and inspired thousands. But Robb Stark hadn't used fire and blood to win the Iron Throne. He had used strategy, restraint, and something even more dangerous than dragons, the love of the people. Back in King's Landing, the North had begun to clean the dirt from the crown. Robb Stark didn't sit on the Iron Throne. He refused. Instead, he held court in the old council chambers, and every major house was summoned to send a representative not to swear blind loyalty, but to discuss the future of Westeros. It was a strange idea, too strange for the old lords. But they came. The Tyrells sent Margaery, clever and calculating. Dorne sent Prince Trystane, quiet but sharp-eyed. Even the Vale, silent for years under Lisa Arryn, finally showed a face young Robin, led by Lord Royce. Robb's idea wasn't to rule like the kings before him. He didn't want to control every blade of grass. He wanted to rebuild Westeros as a realm of kingdoms united by choice, not fear. "The North will stay independent," he declared, "but peace will not come by dividing, only by understanding." Some called him naive. Others called him revolutionary. But before any decision could be made, word came from the east. Daenerys Targaryen had landed in Dorne. It hit the council like a thunderclap. "She comes with dragons," said Lord Royce, his voice heavy, "and fire always follows them." "She claims the throne by blood," said Margaery, "but blood alone does not make a ruler." Sansa, now seated at her brother's side, leaned forward. "She will expect submission. She won't ask for peace." Robb didn't answer for a long time. Then he looked at the map. "Then we meet her. Not with swords, with words." Against the advice of nearly everyone, Robb rode south to Dorne with a small party, no army, no threats, just his banner and his name. The meeting took place near Sunspear. The sand was hot, the air dry, and the tension thick. Daenerys arrived on Dragonback, dressed in red and black, her silver hair blazing in the sun. Drogon landed behind her with a growl, shaking the ground as his wings folded. She looked at Robb with curiosity, not hatred. He looked back, calm and steady. "So," she said, "you are the boy who took what I was born to reclaim." Robb didn't flinch. "I didn't take it. I ended a war. And yet you sit on my throne." "I don't sit on it at all," Robb replied. "I have no interest in thrones. I have interest in peace." Daenerys laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Peace? You sound like a dreamer. Thrones are not given, Stark. They're taken. And yet you claim to be a queen of the people," Robb said. "Do they matter, or do you just want the crown?" Her eyes narrowed. You think I came to talk. I think you came to see if I'm as weak as the kings before me." They stared at each other, wolves and dragons locked in silence. Then Daenerys said, "You have one chance. Bend the knee, and I will let the North keep its freedom. I will let your family live. Deny me, and I will burn every banner you fly." Robb stepped forward, his voice calm. "Then we are already at war." The silence cracked, and far above, Drogon let out a roar that shook the sand. The roar of Drogon echoed across the Dornish sands, and for a moment even the wind seemed to freeze. Soldiers reached for their swords, bows were raised by nervous hands, and the air grew heavy with the taste of fire. But Robb Stark did not move. He stood still beneath the shadow of the beast, his cloak fluttering, his hand resting gently on the hilt of his sword, but not drawing it. Daenerys watched him closely. She had seen kings tremble before her dragons. She had seen lords fall to their knees the moment Drogon opened his wings. But not Robb Stark. The boy who had shattered the Lannisters now stood defiant in the face of a dragon, and something in that unsettled her. "You're either brave," she said quietly, "or a fool." "I've lost too much to be afraid anymore," Robb replied. "My father died in your city. My mother was butchered by those who wore crowns. I have seen honor buried and children burned. I don't fear death. I fear becoming like them." Daenerys stepped closer. Her guards tensed, but she waved them down. "And yet you still deny me what is mine." Robb's jaw tightened. "The throne you were promised was built on blood. It created monsters. It fed tyrants. You say you want to break the wheel, Daenerys, but you ride in with fire and dragons. That's not breaking the wheel. That's spinning it in your favor." She stared at him, fury behind her eyes, but something else too, respect. He wasn't lying. He wasn't flattering her. He truly believed in what he was saying. "I didn't fight a war to take the Iron Throne," Robb said. "I fought to protect my people. I never asked for a crown. And I'll never kneel to another who does." The meeting ended in silence. Daenerys mounted Drogon without another word, and the beast launched into the sky, wings darkening the sun. As her army camped outside Sunspear, her mind was far from calm. She had expected resistance. She had expected stubborn lords. But she hadn't expected a king who didn't want to rule like one. "He'll fight," she said to Missandei, "not for power, for something worse, principle." "And what will you do?" Missandei asked softly. Daenerys stared at the flames in her tent. "If he stands in my way, I will still burn him." Robb returned to King's Landing to find the city bracing for war again. The council chamber was full of whispers, frightened glances, and panic. The lords spoke of dragons, of fire raining from the sky, of what happened in Astapor and Meereen. "You cannot fight fire with swords," they said. "You must surrender." But Robb raised his hand and silenced the room. "She has dragons," he said, "but we have the realm." He wasn't wrong. The Riverlands had sworn to him fully. The Vale, seeing his mercy, sent knights in droves. The Reach had broken ties with the Lannisters after his victory, and even Dorne, tired of blood and war, declared neutrality. But Daenerys had something far more dangerous than soldiers fear. That night, Sansa came to him on the tower balcony. The city below glowed with lanterns, but peace felt 1,000 miles away. "She won't stop," Sansa said. "You know that, don't you?" Robb didn't answer at first. He looked out at the stars. "She's not mad," he said. "Not yet. But she's been taught that fire is the answer to every question. And if you don't kneel, she'll burn you to ashes." Robb turned to her. "Then let her burn me. I won't kneel to fear." At dawn, the skies split open with wings. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion soared over the Blackwater Bay. The city held its breath as shadows danced over the walls. Daenerys had come with her army at her back, her ships lined along the coast and her dragons circling like predators. But what she found waiting for her shocked even her. The gates were open, not in surrender, but in defiance. Robb Stark stood in full armor at the city gates, his army lined behind him, silent, ready. He had placed no archers, no traps, no traps, only truth. He stepped forward and looked to the skies. "You want a war?" he shouted. The dragons roared. "Then come down and take it."